Good morning. Our hand today is Ace 4 of Hearts. So, early position player, or it's to me in early position. Um, I just go with my standard raise first in, pretty tight range. Um, in terms of sizing, I've only been in this table for 15 hands. This is hand number 16. I look at everyone behind us. Uh, I don't see anyone that's overly loose. Maybe this player, 51-4. Um, but I think he just sat out the hand. So just going to do standard three big blind raise and go from there. So three big blind raise, we then get the button calls. Button's playing 29-20. When we look at his call to bet for the big blind, it's 1 out of 6. We really don't have a whole lot of information. We could go 3-bet by position, 0 out of 5. He hasn't 3-bet. Pre-flop raise is 1 out of 14 from the big blind. VPIP is 2 out of 15. It's just we don't have a whole lot of information here. Don't have a whole lot of information. So I think what we can do is just say he's probably playing something a little bit speculative. He just called. This may be a little too wide. It's heads up. Maybe the suited aces play. Maybe your suited connectors, some of the suited broadways, your offsuit aces, king queen offsuit's a common one that gets played. This might be a little too tight, but it's at 13%, so it's probably okay. Minus queens plus ace king, which I would envision would be 3-betting. So he calls, and we're going to see a flop. So let's work with this. He's playing 13.3%. He has 176 combos. I'm running tighter at 12.2%. I have 162 combos. So if we just look at our ranges, you can see that I have some higher hands. I could go for aces and kings, ace king. I don't think he can have that. I think we've got suited aces. If an ace flops, I'm going to have more, or he's going to have more hands in his range that would have connected with that ace. Me, not so much, but if I connect and I have one of these high kickers, it's more likely that he has a lower kicker. So kind of thinking it in that regards. Flop comes down 10-6-4. So overall, it's not horrible. It's not a great flop either. That 10 is going to hit a lot of hands in the calling ranges. So 10-6-4. You can see that I'm running at 56.8 versus 43.2. I am going to be slightly ahead. However, I think if it checks to me, I have to deal with a lot of calls. So just looking at a c-bet stats, he c-bets quite a bit. 78% when he's in position, 60% when out of position. Then he continues when he's in position 67% of the time, but he doesn't when he's out of position. I do think he's going to be a bit aggressive with his bets. But I don't know how he's going to play, how he's going to respond to c-bet. So right now, I have full this c-bet 50% of the time. He checks. Okay, that's fine. He checks. Now, what do we do? What are we gonna bet? If we bet, what kind of hands is he gonna call? I think if I bet, he's probably going to call with all of his pocket pairs because that 10, yeah, it's gonna hit calling range. It's not really gonna hit my range. I think there's reason for him to call at least once to see what I do on the turn. If I check behind on the turn, then he can go out and fire big on the river and probably get me to fold a lot of hands. I mean, I do have all of these unpaired cards: ace king to ace jack, king queen queen jack. I connect top pair with the 10. I do have the pairs, but I also have like ace 2, ace 3, ace 4 that could have connected. So I think if I bet, he's probably going to be calling with his pairs. I'm going to say probably with any pair is what he's looking at. Twos and threes, maybe we'll leave those out. I think he calls with flush draw, open enders, probably the gut shot. I don't think I think a lot of people just end up folding over cards. I mean, that we're at 50%. So 50% of the time, I bet he's going to be calling, and if he calls, we're going to be kind of hurting. So what kind of hands could we bet that has a mix of value and a mix of draws? So I do think top pair we're going to be betting. I think pocket pair below the top card we're probably going to be betting 7, 8s, and 9s. I think we're targeting. We know or we think he's going to call with like 6s, 5s, and 4s. So get our bet in now, because if the turn brings ace, king, queen, and we bet the turn, we check flop and then bet the turn on those cards. I think we're not going to get some value. So I think we can get some value with some of these pairs. I think flush draw, open enders, gut shots are going to get some value here. I do think we could get a little bit of value with our 2-card backdoor flush draws. So the clubs, if we have the clubs, probably all of the clubs. And I think with our overcards, we can probably bet all of those. And our overcards in this case is we're betting because we know if a card higher than a 10 comes out that we can fire a second barrel, and we're very much likely to pick it up. We don't have to connect with that pair, but it's going to be a scare card, something that we can bet. So I think we're betting 81.1% of the time. It's almost an even distribution, and that may be bad. Maybe we should check some of these other hands just to encourage some calls. But versus I think kind of a looser player, I think this is pretty good. If he calls, and we improve, and the turn card improves our range or hits our range a little bit more, then I think we can fire that second barrel, and we'll probably get him to fold these other cards. So what do I do? How much do I bet? I bet half pot, 3 1/4 big blinds. I think it is appropriate. I checked here, so let's X these out. And I think this is the problem. This is, I think, the problem that I have here is that I'm checking with those, and if he bets the turn, I have to kind of ask myself, is he betting as a bluff, or does he actually have a hand, and should I try to chase some of these draws? Do I improve my hand at all? So that's going to be my checking range, and then he has 100% of his range in there. And we're going to go to the turn. Number of combos that I've got 28 combos. Their flop range is still basically 100% of their previous range. They have set 160 combos. Yep, 160 combos. And we go to a turn of 3 of clubs. And I think that was a good hand. Or a good card for my continuance range had I c-bet. So I think this is a decent spot. I mean, not for all of them, but I had those backdoor flush draws. I think I would fire out with those with the now flush draws. I think the overcards, ace, king, king, queen, we're gonna have to check those. We could still fire out our overpair, our tens, top pairs, but I think we would probably start checking like the 7s, 8s, and 9s. 7s, maybe we could bet because we're going for a gut shot, but I think that card's okay for a range. It doesn't really improve our fold equity as much, but I think it hits our fold equity if we think he's calling with like 4s, 5s, a pair of 6s, and so forth, and he's going to fold to that second barrel. All right, so you can see on this turn card, three clubs. My equity is still above 50%, which I'm going to say I think is a little surprising for me, because we checked a lot of hands, and I think maybe it's because this player does have a lot of missed hands. Now he bets five big blinds, and the question is, what is he going to bet five big blinds with? Would he bet it with the set? I don't know. Maybe I kind of feel like a set would probably bet a little bit smaller. I think an overpair might bet, with the jacks, try to get ace, king, king, queen out. I think top pair's gonna bet. Is top pair gonna bet that large? Maybe. What about these other pairs? I think once I showed weakness, I think he's gonna try to take a stab at it. Probably. Um, I think definitely with the fives because he has the gut shot now. Would he bet this large on the flush? Well, I'm going to go back up to here and just check some of his stats. So overall, he is pretty loose aggressive, 29-20, raise first in 29%. Seems to raise first in quite a bit. Doesn't really limp as much. Limp and fold, 1 out of 1. Limp and call raise 0 out of 1. His limp first in's 1 out of 5. On the turn, we missed a C bet, so now he's going to bet. His bet is 7 out of 19. I do think he's going to be betting. He's going to be the aggressor quite a bit. And I think he would be betting open-ended straight draws. Maybe not the gut shots. I mean, he could if he's bluffing it. I don't think overcards will try to bluff. I do think he's going to have some sort of draw. So one of those draws, one of these pairs, I think sets little too. Well, maybe he's pretty consistent. Maybe he's always going to be betting that amount. Kind of protects this range. I wish we knew a little bit more about this player. I do have that he plays the turn draws aggressively, so I think that justifies playing, the flushes, gut shots, open enders in there. Weak pair, ace 3, ace 2. I don't know. We'll go with this. Let's say that is his leading range. Question is, what are we gonna do? If we call, what hands do I think is he going to be betting again? I don't think he's going to bet again unless he hits his draws. I think he bets his set. Probably the overpair and top pair as long as that card is as long as the river card is low. If the river card's a Broadway, I don't think he bets. So I think there's a chance that he's probably not going to be betting a whole lot. So I feel like it. So pot now is 11.5. He's got 54.4. I think what we can do is raise our sets. I just called. We're going to raise our sets. And then when we think about what else could we raise, I think maybe we're going to raise our open enders. So if we did that, then we're looking at, let's do this. That's our set, and then our bluff. We're making a pretty strong play at it, and that actually may be too much. So maybe the open enders that we raise is just ace 5. So we're calling for a 2 or 7, and we have the ace that if we catch, we might be ahead. I think that's a better play than raising with the 5s, because the 5s, if we're behind to, let's say, 7s, 8s, 9s, we can improve. We can catch a 5, but now 7s have a straight, and we have to improve if we're behind. Whereas with the ace 5, we can hit our straight, or we can hit the ace. I think that's going to be my raise. So I think those are the raises. I didn't. I just called. So, what kind of hands are we going to call with? I do think we're going to call with the fives. Um, we're not calling with our sets. Um, should we call with some of these middle pair, weak pairs hands? If we think he's bluffing a lot, I think we could. And I think he does have a lot. I think if we broke this down to all of his draws, you can see he's got 62% draws uh, in his range, and I think we might be able to call with these pairs with the idea that if a Broadway card comes out and he checks, we bet we might be able to take the pot away from him. I think it can't be a spade, maybe not a club. I'm not sure if we call with anything else. So the middle pair, 7-6, we could get a 5 and improve. Fives, I think we're calling. Ace 3, ace 4, twos. That's a lot. I think that's probably it. We're calling with some equity. Do we turn these into bluffs? Maybe like 7-6 is maybe fives. Maybe I think those are just kind of check call or check behind ranges. We have value. He's not going to call any of his misdraws, and I don't really think he's going to call any of his or he's going to fold any of his pairs here. So um, I think we're for value. And ace 3, ace 4, twos maybe. Here maybe we call those. So we're going to continue here. And I think this is the spot here. Not so much the c bet. I think this is the spot where I was a little unsure on what to do. Villain still has a lot of cards in his range. If I think he's going to be aggressive with all of his draws. River cards, 4 spades. 31.9 and 68.1. You can see that hand doesn't really improve anyone. Yeah, the spades kind of hit. He checks to me. I think he's probably going to bet his quads, full house, flushes. I think he's still betting. Overpair, maybe. Overpair may be a check call. Top pair could be a check call. 7s, 8s, 9s may be a check call too. So you can see 23% he's betting for value. I think check call is going to be 33%. And then he's folding, I think, all of these, the middle pairs, ace high, and so forth. So he checks. And it's on us. And based on my range, I think we have some value here because we're ahead of all of his misdraws. And I don't think we're going to be able to get any higher pair to call. So I bet here. I remember my hand, but I don't think I would bet with any of those hands. And he calls. So let's just assume he calls. Those are the hands that I think he calls with. And he shows, I show the ace 4, he shows 8s. Are 8s in his range? Yeah, 8s are in his range, but I don't have ace 4 in my range. So the question is, was this ace 4 a good call? And I don't think so. I think the turn here, we should have just folded. Yeah, we have a pair, but really when you think about it, we're looking at 5 outs. Any of the 4s, any of the 8s could improve us. I think maybe at the time I was thinking I could catch a spade or a club and try to represent the flushes. That didn't, I mean, he didn't fold it, but I think you have to go through and say, okay, this player's playing the draws aggressively. If I don't have the spade draw, it's possible that he's making that play with the spade draw. And when he checks, did he miss? Is he trapping? I don't think he's necessarily trapping. I just think he didn't. That's not the draw that he hit. Um, I don't think this is going to be a good spot to bet on the river at all unless I have for value. And the only way to get some value is to, I think, make a mistake here on the turn, calling on the turn when I shouldn't. I got lucky here. I don't like this. I don't like how that played. So um, interesting. I do think my check on the flop was okay. I think the board does hit the caller's range more than mine. I think this is appropriate. So if we had, if I had, um, if I caught, let's say, 9 and had pocket nines, or, if I caught the 4 on the turn instead and he bets, I think I could raise. And yeah, he probably fold his eights, but I think he calls with any of his spade draws, any of his, yeah, if we switch him, he would call with his spade draws, probably with ace of spades and so forth. All right, hopefully you learned something. Hopefully you don't do what I do, but hey, sometimes you have to get lucky. All right, look tomorrow for another hand.